Hello, my name is Satchel Holmes Williams, and I am a GSMST teacher or Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology teacher. I'm going to give you a crash course in the different components that we have available to us via our best gal pal, which is, of course, the PCPartPicker. Let's get started. Starting with CPU. CPU stands for Central Processing Unit and is the brain of the computer. It executes and it interprets all the different commands that you do within your computer. Every time you click something, every time you open up a program, it is in some way, shape, or form going through the CPU or the Central Processing Unit. Okay? Now, looking at some of these lanes, we're going to look at the core count. A general rule of thumb is the higher the core count, the better or more powerful the CPU. A 8-core CPU is going to be better than a 6-core. A 16-core CPU is going to be better than an 8-core. Generally, this isn't the only thing you want to look at, but generally, higher is better. Okay. There's another thing that they don't have here called threads. If you think of the core count, think of them as roads. So the more roads you have, the more places you can go, right? The more options you have to go to different places. Threads in this case would be the different lanes in a row. So the more threads that you have within a lane of traffic, the more traffic can travel on a road, right? So if you have 4 lanes versus 16 lanes, of course you're going to be able to have more traffic travel on the 16 lane road than the 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever lane road. So again, more threads or more core is going to give you better performance. And it's also going to cost you more money. Looking at core clock and core boost clock, just know that, again, higher is better. So, of course, having 4.2 gigahertz, that's what that is. That's what it's measured in, gigahertz, is going to be faster and have more speed than a 3.7 gigahertz, right? And again, the boost clock is essentially the max power that you can get out of your CPU or central processing unit. So, again, having a higher max clock is going to mean that you're going to be able to do more and push it to its limit a lot more than something with a lower boost clock. TDP is essentially how much power you're requiring. So generally, a more powerful CPU is going to require more power. So in this case, the 6-core CPU, it only takes 65 watts versus you have the 16-core needing 120. So again, in general, the more powerful the CPU, the more wattage or the more power it's going to need, meaning that you're going to need a beefier, more powerful power supply, which we will discuss later on. Finally, we have this thing called integrated graphics, and these are graphics that are integrated within your CPU. If you have a CPU with integrated graphics, just know that you're able to show and display graphics, usually on a simple level, like display your screen and display simple things. But if you want to have a more powerful or superior graphic experience, like playing games, you're going to want to get what we call a dedicated GPU or a dedicated video card, which we will discuss in a few components. Otherwise, that is the CPU. Moving on to the CPU cooler, things you need to know here is fan RPM. Fan RPM is rotations per minute. So the higher the rotations per minute, the more air you're going to have, the more cool your CPU is generally going to be. So if you want to get the max amount of cooling, you're going to want to get a cooler that has a higher RPM. Okay, that's really the rule of thumb there. Other than that, you want to look at noise level. So again, the higher the noise level or the higher the decibel noise level, the more noise your CPU cooler is going to make. And so you just have to be wary of that. Just like when you turn on the air conditioner, it makes an audible noise. The more air or the higher the RPM that you're pushing, the more air is going to come out, the higher the sound is generally. Although there are some companies that specialize in having high performance fans that also run quiet. Other than that, radiator size is something that's not going to affect like your standard boxy looking CPU fans. However, if you do have a radiator, which is more like a water cooler, again, in general, the bigger the radiator, the more cool or the more air is going to be pushed through, meaning the more cool your CPU is going to be. Awesome. Let's keep on going. If you haven't noticed, the CPU gets really hot, so that's why it has its own dedicated cooler. Looking at the motherboard connects all computer components together, okay? So think of how, when you came out of your mother, right? Let's go through some little science, right? Science lesson real quick. When you come out of your mother, you're connected to her. You're in her womb. You're connected to her blood supply, just like how everything is connected to a motherboard. And even when you come out of your mother, C-section, natural, it doesn't really matter. You are hooked on by an umbilical cord, and that is what is now your belly button, right? But just like how you are physically connected to your mother within her womb, and even outside the room before they cut the umbilical cord, the motherboard connects all the different computer components together, CPU, RAM, GPU, all that good stuff. So this is the mother of the computer. You need it to connect everything together. Other than that, looking at CPU socket, This is basically compatibility things. So the only thing you really need to worry about when it comes to compatibility within your computer is going to be the size of your motherboard and the size of your case, and of course whether or not your CPU and your motherboard have matching sockets. Okay, so if you have an AMD PC CPU, excuse me, you're going to want to match it up. So if you have an AM5 socket CPU, you don't want to put that socket on AM4, right? You want to match it up. Just play match game. You don't want to mix them. Other than that, you have this thing called form factor. Essentially, these are just the different sizes. If you have a micro ATX motherboard, it's going to be smaller or microer than a regular ATX motherboard. So you have to think about, how much that motherboard can physically hold on it. Because of course, if you have a smaller motherboard, it's going to be the less space it's going to have to hold all your stuff on it. Other than that, you have this thing called memory max. It's just the max amount of memory or RAM, random access memory that you can hold on your actual motherboard. So if you're running a high performance computer, like a gaming computer, you're going to want to make sure you have a higher than average max capacity, just in case you want to install a lot of RAM to be able to run a lot of processes, or if you want to expand on your RAM later. And finally, you have the memory slots, and this is just how many physical slots you have to physically put physical sticks of RAM. So most have 4, some have 2. It depends on the side. You see how this micro ATX has 2 versus most of the other ones have 4. This mini ITX has 2 as well. So again, these minis and micro versions of the standard motherboard are going to affect how much you can put on your motherboard. So of course, if you want to put more, you probably want to go with a regular non-micro or mini ITX or ATX motherboard. All right, let's keep on going, y'all. Memory also goes by RAM, also goes by random access memory. This is basically what controls your everyday tasks. So whenever you open up a program, it gets processed by the CPU, and all that memory, that short-term memory or that short-term or volatile memory goes into RAM to be able to quickly access it. Think of it as like a faster version of your SSD or HDD or your storage, okay? So again, looking at stuff like speed, DDR5 is generally faster than DDR4, which is faster than DDR3, which is faster than DDR2. So again, it follows that same trend where higher number means faster performance means more cost, but again, you get faster performance. The other part of this is going to be your speed. So again, 3200 speed, and I forget what this is measured in, but you can look it up. It's going to be faster than 6,000, or it's going to be slower than 6,000. If you look, the price of this DDR4 at 3,200 is a lot cheaper than this DDR5 at 6,000. So again, generally, the faster it is, the newer it is, the more powerful it is, but also the more expensive. And then this modules here just tells you how many sticks comes with it. So this is a 32 pack of RAM, and it comes in 2 16 gigabyte sticks, right? And if we search for a 64 gigabyte, most of them come in 2 32 gigabyte sticks. So thinking about your RAM slots on your motherboard, if you have 4 RAM slots and you're trying to get the bang for your buck, you could get 2 of these 64 gigabyte packs, and you'll have 4 physical sticks of 32 gigabytes of RAM, totaling 128. Moving on, we have your latency. So CS latency, first latency, just know that latency means lag. And this goes against what we've been establishing, higher meaning better. This is lower is better. Again, think of latency like lag. You want as little lag as possible. Think if you've ever played a competitive game online, the lag is the time between you press a button on the keyboard and the time that it actually reacts on the screen. You want that to be as small as possible. So the less lag or the less latency you have, the higher it's going to be, but also the better performance is going to be. All right, we're going to go ahead, or the higher the price, the better the performance. Excuse me. Moving on to storage. This is your HDD or your hard disk drive, which is going to be your older, slower, bigger, louder, and less reliable version of the newer standard, which is the SSD or the solid state drive. So here we have a whole bunch of solid state drives. So you can see they're all SSDs. And again, if we go down, we're going to find the Barracuda. I hope I said that correctly. This is a HHD or a hard disk drive. And the reason why you know that is because it has this thing called RPM. RPM is rotations per minute, just like we have on the fan. And if you did not know, a hard disk drive has a CD in it that physically spins around. So the reason why it's not as reliable as SSD, because it has moving parts. And of course, moving parts has friction and heat. And of course, friction and heat are the devil to any computer component. So these usually don't last as long strong, but the benefit of them is that they can hold a lot of storage. So if you need to hold a lot of archive data, like a lot of movies and videos and stuff like that, these are great at holding that data, especially if you don't need to access it a lot. And again, in general, the faster the RPM for your hard disk drive, the faster the speed, the lower the speed it's going to be. So again, you have a 2 terabyte here at 72 RPM, and it's $64. Versus you have a 2 terabyte in an SSD, right? And it's over twice the price. So again, SSDs are newer. They're faster, they're more reliable because they don't have any moving parts. They're also physically smaller. They come in different flavors. You have the SATA flavor, which is going to be, or SATA flavor, as some people will say, that connects similarly to the older HDD or hard disk drive. And then you have the newer flavor called the NVMe.M2, which is going to be really small. I mean, look at how small this thing looks. It's really small. And that goes straight on your motherboard. But either flavor you get, generally, you're going to get more bang for your buck when you go for the HDD. You're going to get more memory for less. So again, look at this. We have a SSD, 4 terabytes. It's $324. Let's scroll on down here to this bad boy. It is a hard disk drive. You can tell by the RPM. And this is $84. So it is literally over a third, less than a third of the price of the equivalent SSD or SSD. So again, things to think about. So let's keep on going. All right, we have video card. Video card can also be known as a GPU or a graphics processing unit. And remember how we talked about integrated graphics? Well, this would be called dedicated graphics, meaning that it has its own dedicated graphics processing power, and it has its own dedicated RAM just for graphics. So again, in general, more memory that you have, so the higher the gigabyte, the more powerful, the more things you can do, the pricier it's going to be. Same thing with the naming convention. So if you look right here, we have a 4060 and we have a 4070. The 4070 being higher in number than the 4060 means it's going to be a better overall GPU. And if you look at the price, the 4060 is $292 versus the 4070, its older brother, it is $549. So again, you can see how, again, higher numbers means higher quality, usually higher speeds, premium, but that also means higher price. There's 2 flavors of GPU. Traditionally, there's going to be your NVIDIA-based GPU and your AMD GPUs. NVIDIA is usually the GeForce, and then the AMD is usually this Radeon. And again, it follows the same naming convention. The 6750 is going to be a lesser version of the 7700. And again, you can see in the price, the 6750 is $309 versus the 7700 is almost $400. So again, higher the number, higher the price, better the performance. Anything else? Clock speed, boost, and core are the same difference, right? This is instead of being in gigahertz like the CPU in megahertz. And again, higher, better, pricier, awesome. And then the length, essentially how big it is physically. So this is another thing you have to consider in your case. You know, the higher the length, you need to make sure you have a case that's big enough to accommodate that extra length. Let's keep on going. Let's go to the case. The case is, again, this is probably going to be the thing that you look at the least, unless you're really worried about aesthetics, because it just holds everything inside of it. And as long as you have the appropriate cooling, any case will do. The big thing you want to worry about is making sure it has the right size. Again, if you have a bigger GPU, you're going to want to have a bigger case because it's going to be able to accommodate that bigger size. Also, look at how you have similar naming conventions to your motherboard. So again, a micro ATX motherboard is going to be the perfect size for a micro ATX tower. But you might want to, if you're getting a regular ATX or a regular ITX motherboard, you're going to want to get a regular mid tower that's of the same name. So just make sure you're matching those up, making sure that your CPU or your motherboard can fit in and your GPU can fit in your case. Other than that, you just have other features. It tells you how much volume it has. So, you know, that's cool to know how much volume and space you have. Let's go to power supply. Power supply is essentially how much power your whole system's going to need. So again, if you have a powerful GPU, you have a powerful CPU, you have powerful RAM, you're going to want to have a higher wattage power supply. So again, you have some of these things right here. Efficiency ratings, they matter, but not really. Generally, gold's going to be better than silver, so it's going to be better than bronze. So again, if you're building a premium system with premium parts, you're going to want to go for silver or gold. Otherwise, bronze is okay if you're building a mid to low tier system. And all of them are ATX except for maybe a couple, so you're going to generally get an ATX size one. And then again, the wattage is really what you want to, look at. Wattage, again, higher wattage usually means you have higher powered components you need to power. You do not want to get a power supply that cannot fulfill the power needs of your particular computer component. So make sure you go and you check the amount of estimated wattage within PCPartPicker, and it will basically tell you how much you need, and you always want to go over that number within your power supply. And then module, you have full, you have not simile, a semi, and you have no. That basically means whether it is a modular. So modular just meaning that you're able to take out different components you don't need within the actual power supply. So if you only need power to CPU, GPU, etc., then you can put those in without having to have all the other cables there. If it is not modular, that means you have all the cables just sticking out. It can be a mess to try to manage, but again, those usually cost less. So if you can get a good wattage and get one that's not modular, you just have to deal with the cables, but you deal with less money to have to spend. All right. Operating system, this is really just, different flavors of Windows 11. You shouldn't be getting anything outside the newest version of Windows, so let's just forget Windows 10 exists. There really isn't much of a difference between the different versions. Most people, like 90% of people, are going to need Home. Sometimes Pro works, and again, you'll know if you need Pro, but most people need Home. Any questions? No. Awesome. Finally, well, not finally, you have monitor. Monitor, this is just to your flavor. Bigger monitor, bigger price, higher hertz or refresh rate, the higher the price. The lower the response time, which is the same thing as lag. So the lower the response time, the better. So one that has 0.03 milliseconds is going to be way more expensive than one that has 1 millisecond. Also, it depends on the type of panel type, but we're not going to go into all that. And yeah, those are all of the primary PC parts. Again, peripherals, those are just to your liking. If you like high-end headphones, spend more. If you don't, spend less. Same thing with mouse, keyboard, webcam, etc. Hopefully this little crash course helped you. Hopefully it was beneficial. And that was me, Mr. Holmes Williams from the Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology, aka GSMST. Hope you're having a lovely day. See ya!